Hey, it is your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. And we're zooming in and focusing in on a wonderful viewer question we got in. And that was really a state of really a conundrum, an enigma, a confusion as to why and how they could have permitted themselves to get so caught up in a relationship with a cluster B personality, someone who has mental pathologies, either narcissism, covert narcissism, sociopathic or psychopathy, where an individual is really presenting with a real pathological sense of self-importance and a lack of empathy. In other words, the scales are totally tipped. The relationship is relentlessly all about them, and it never takes into account you, your needs, your voice, your input. And really, it becomes a really sort of exasperated situation where eventually your life then seems to become molded around satisfying their needs rather than living from your heart center, or really what it's about you, and really kind of bringing out your strengths as a man, your strengths as a woman, your ability to explore your talents, your interests, and feeling then furthermore like an aversion to love, not really knowing what it is, an aversion to relationships, or feeling like I don't have positive relationships anymore. And they're wondering really how this got set up within them, and then how to really change it up in their life. In other words, how can I really begin anew? How can I recreate a new me, especially as I reinvent myself as it relates to coming into a new relationships and experiencing the world at large? So number one is to realize that this relationship oftentimes was set up through boundary violation, or unbeknownst to you, really sort of subconsciously, you did not realize that you were falling in love or falling for this person, or that you were really sort of taking on their negative projections. So a lot of people just thought that, this was what love was. This is what relationships were. You are always to be the underling. You are always to be the underdog. You're always to feel as if there's something not quite right about you, or to live with a chronic feeling of shame. And it can be a very subtle feeling where you just feel kind of a pervasive feeling that, something is not right about you, or you don't have what it takes. You didn't grow up on the right side of the tracks. You didn't get up on the right side of the bed. You don't have the right kind of hair. You don't have the right kind of skin. You don't have the right kind of voice. Whatever it is that had been drilled or ingrained in you that was toxic, feeling that there is something about you that is not enough. Your muscles aren't the right way. Your shoulders aren't the right way. Whatever it is that was drilled in and projected onto you, that you kind of absorbed or took into part of your identity incorporation, that has been there to satisfy the pathological, or satisfy the mental pathologies of this individual. Realize that it's something that has now become like a comfort zone for you, or really kind of like a mental familiarity, or really what is oftentimes felt as a mental addiction. In other words, you become so habituated and so used to, chronically relating to people, if not kind of set up, the mold was set up by this individual. So all further relationships tend to take this pattern. So the pattern continues, how you then related to this person who really had, this sort of significance or importance in your relationship. So you, early on, you had set up a certain meaning that this person is so important, or you really care about this person's perspective, and you took not only what they said as a grain of salt, but, with a grain of salt, but you took their assessment of you as the truth, the end all, and really there is no more left for you in life. And so then in other words, this could be a parent. Oftentimes the parent really plays the role in the mind, or the cognitions, like Freud stated, as the superego. They become really the moral or assessment and determination of judgment for all your other behaviors, your values, and then furthermore, your relation choices from there moving forward. And this can be from the positive as well as the negative. In other words, They can cause you to make negative relationship choices, or how you then kind of act or put on a facade in order to please them. In other words, I have to have this type of relationship, and you adopt it. Then you adopt it as your own when you really feel like it's not the real you. In other words, it's the I have to do this, I have to do that, versus I want to do this, I want to do that, I am this. So there becomes a disconnect early on between your authentic kind of like underpinnings, or your true talent, your true fulfillment. You're not permitted to have that because of the over idealized perspective that you had of this person, and then has then kind of come your internal guiding system, or your internal superego, kind of judging and evaluating all your future relationships. And then, you then begin making decisions along the pattern, and it's time to break the pattern and to realize that, there is, this was set up oftentimes through a boundary violation also. So boundary violation meaning you weren't able to put your foot down and say, no, that's not correct. Or you didn't want to constantly go into battle and confrontation with this person who was narcissistic or psychopathic, and realize oftentimes that there's no winning with them, or perhaps you have felt that there's a chronic fighting or a chronic conflict consciousness with them. In other words, there's always going to be this abrasiveness. There's always going to be this battling of wits. There's always going to be this battling of trying to prove yourself, justify yourself. A lot of people experience it as, constantly feeling like you are on trial. And so this becomes the new normal. This becomes, the elephant in the room, where basically, you're feeling like this constant discomfort is what you just begin to cope with. And then your life becomes nothing but a series of coping from one to the other to the other. And life is not meant to be lived in this, constant defense mechanism state. Eventually, you're going to burn out. Your adrenal fatigue is going to set in, and you are going to be unhappy. And it's realizing that you do not have to, keep that basically edge of the table and constantly trying to be pleasing people. Being the underling, being the underdog, coming from the stress hormones, coming from that perspective, because they set up that pattern, and the pattern can become very rigid in you. And then you basically come to a point where, things aren't working. You hit a rock bottom. And so that awareness is the first step. And also realizing that perhaps then if you have, then turn the table and then becoming the rebel, where basically you begin rebelling and you feel like you can't trust yourself, you can't trust the world, you can't have positive relationships, and you develop an aversion to relationships. Like, I don't know how to have relationships. I can't take people. I can't take life anymore. This is kind of like a feeling of PTSD, where you've been kind of like traumatized, or you don't know how to erect positively your boundaries and protect yourself and kind of act from this positive space, and raising your standards of what you will and will not accept. Coming from that perspective also comes from the awareness, and furthermore saying, okay, now I realize that the negative was set up in me from this person, and it's become a really kind of rigid pattern. It's time for me to chisel it free, break it free, and now realize that I can come from my own self-evaluation and live by that, and I am enough, and I can furthermore protect myself and keep safe in relationships that aren't, with these types of individuals, because it's the eye-opening that there are other relationships in store for you, where you can be embraced and adored and loved for the person that you are, and not for the person that the narcissist wants you to be. The people pleaser, the underdog, the less than, I am weak, that sort of experience. So it's getting the awareness and getting that certainty in your heart, which begins with believing in yourself. And I know that these are very etheric, concepts, but such is the realm of psychology and understanding kind of what has happened. It's kind of like, looking, it's like playing the reels of a basketball player, and you know how they study and train and coach and saying, okay, this is where you did wrong. You know, this is where you passed it to the opponent. It's kind of like looking at that and saying, okay, now's my time to kind of realize where this happened, realize where I made the pass. You know, I passed it to the narcissist. I passed the ball to the psychopath. I gave it away. I gave myself away. I gave my self-value away. Now the ball is back in my court. Now I'm just gonna, bounce it around a little bit and get my vision a little bit clearer of who my true teammates are, who can I trust, and can I really interact with and play together without feeling at a loss and feeling at a constant defeat. Because every time really you pass it to the narcissist or the psychopath, you're passing it to the opposition, you're passing it to the other team. You feel helpless, you feel powerless, and it's because they really do need to have that kind of counter conflict consciousness when they come into play with people. They always need to have the win. They need to always do the trickery, and the conning of feeling like you cannot be their equal. That is how they always keep a leg up, and that's how you're in a relationship with a narcissist, a psychopath, a sociopath, someone with mental pathologies that present in this very specific manner. It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.